I've spent the last 10 years exploring the wilderness, always forging my own path and relying on my trusty map and compass to keep me on course. From the Blue Ridge Mountains to the Smoky Mountains and now to the Florida swamps. That's how I've got it done. Now, along the way, I've made some mistakes, some avoidable and some not so avoidable, such as back in Tennessee being trapped at the edge of a 300-foot rock face with an 80-pound pack on my back and no way to get out of that situation but to go down the rock face, or some rather dangerous individuals I have encountered in the woods before, and situations overall that immediately the thought crossed my mind, I might not get out of here alive, or I might be stuck in this situation for an indeterminate amount of time. But either way, I've somehow managed, by the grace of God and my training and experience, to stay calm and collected and get out in one piece. And the adventure that I'm going to share with you guys today is no different. It could have gotten a lot worse. It could have turned into a very serious survival situation, but thankfully it didn't. I fell back on my training, I fell back on my experience, and I remained calm. So, I'm going to share that situation with you guys. I'm going to tell you what happened, and then I'm going to share what changes I've made to my gear and my recon strategies to avoid this ever happening again. So let's get into it. It started out like any average filming trip. The plan was simple: explore a new area, get some B-roll for a new video, be out for a few hours, and then head back home. Using a topo map I printed from alltrails.com, which I will say is an amazing resource for maps, so check that out if you're not aware of that, I plotted a very simple route from a dirt road into the forest, skimming past a massive swamp and ending about 2 miles south of my starting point. Go out, come back, go home, end of story. Simple. I set my course and headed into the forest, and nothing unusual happened for about the first hour. Sure, the underbrush got thicker, the vines got taller, visibility shrunk, but that's normal when you're out there bushwhacking and making your own path. Then I broke out into a clearing and started to notice lots of standing water, but still, I didn't consider this to be a big deal since I was close to a swamp. However, as I pushed on, I started to see water everywhere, but there were still enough dry spots that I could kind of leapfrog to, so I still wasn't really concerned. I was checking my bearings, zigzagging, and was staying on course, so not concerned, not a big deal, I keep on moving. As I continued further south, the vegetation and vines and everything else started to close in tighter and tighter, and the water got wider and deeper until I finally had to get wet. Looking back, at this point, it probably would have been a good idea to turn around or set a new route, but I was sure I was still on the edges of the swamp, and at least according to my topo map, which was good to go, and my bearing, which was still good to go. So I pushed on, because who cares about getting a little wet and dirty? You guys know the deal. If you're going out in the forest, you know, bushwhacking, making your own trail, expect to get a little wet and dirty. And if you don't, then, you know, maybe that's the wrong activity for you. But anyways, you know, I didn't care. You know, get a little wet, get a little dirty, have fun, not a big deal. So I kept on moving. Then, maybe, I don't know, it was about 10, 15 minutes later, I realized that I was absolutely 100% in the swamp, and there was no doubt about it. Visibility had shrunk down to maybe a foot or two in front of me, around me, on all sides, and I was reduced at some points to crawling under the roots and vines and thorn bushes, getting torn up along the way. Progress is agonizingly slow, and I was a little concerned, but I still, you know, I had my compass right, my bearing was on point, and I knew based on the map I was on course, and there appeared to be a dirt road about 3/4, maybe a half a mile, whatever, fairly close, and this dirt road was in the distance, and I just had to keep moving basically south. Then the situation got worse. In order to move forward, I had to cross huge stretches of water up to my waist, and the only thing I'm thinking about is snakes, alligators, and God knows what else. And those are all things that I absolutely despise, which, being here in Florida, that's basically par for the course. So I just sucked it up and I kept moving. After wading through water for what seems like forever and stopping every couple feet to retie my boots and check my gear, I found some exposed mangrove roots above the water, and I stopped to check my bearing. And I realized that my compass was gone. I guess at some point while I was low crawling through hell, the compass was torn off from around my neck. And bear in mind, I just don't have the compass just hanging out. It's around my neck, securely, at least I thought, and then tucked inside my base layer shirt and my combat shirt. So how it got torn off, I have no idea, but the compass was gone. Now my heart rate really spikes, and I realize that I have a serious frickin' problem. No compass, zero visibility. I'm in an area that I've never been in before. I'm low on water, and I don't know what to do. So I stopped. I sat down for a minute and I collected my thoughts, because at this point in time, panic is not an option. If I start making wrong moves and I start panicking, I'm gonna end up in the swamp, and I'm gonna stay in the damn swamp. And that's not an option. I let my heart rate fall back to normal and did a full gear check. And then that's when I discovered that my poncho, which was strapped to the side of my pack, was also gone. Torn off at some point as I crawled and pushed through the swamp. And bear in mind, guys, I had this thing strapped down with compression straps. So how it came loose, I don't know, but it did. So at this point, I have no shelter, no compass, and I'm really running low on water, and the negative thoughts start to creep in, but I push them out and I make a plan. Since I had just checked my compass, maybe I think it was about 2 minutes before I realized that I had lost it and I was on course at that point in time, I assumed that I was still basically pointed in the right direction. And with no compass, the only way to ensure that I got out of the swamp and didn't get stuck moving in circles was to move in a 100% straight line and use whatever available landmarks that I had to keep me on course. Visibility was basically gone. There's no visibility, zero visibility. The vines and the vegetation and all the undergrowth is at least 8 feet tall, so I can barely see trees. But what I can see, I do see some pine trees, so I use those as landmarks, and that made me happy. So I reset my gear, said a quick prayer, and headed off, and knowing once again that any slight deviations in course will keep me in the swamp and probably keep me trapped overnight, which, yeah, overnight trapped in a swamp with basically no water, no poncho, and no compass. Yeah, not cool. So for me, my whole world narrowed down into a singular point of focus, and nothing else existed for about the next 2 to 2.5 hours. Nothing but moving forward, over, under, and through the maze of roots and vines, keeping a straight course no matter what. Finally, in the distance, I heard a truck, and I knew I had to be close to the road. I felt a final burst of energy, and I pushed harder until I broke out, literally fell out of the swamp onto the dirt track. I can tell you right now, I have never been happier to set foot on a dirt road. So I did a quick 360 view of my surroundings just to see like where the hell I was at. And then I dropped my pack and collapsed, soaking wet, covered in mud, and just mentally drained and physically exhausted. And to compound the physical exhaustion, I had just hit legs super hard at the gym just the day before. So yeah, my legs were absolutely smoked. After about a 5-minute break, maybe a 10-minute break, I actually had to force myself to take a break because I was so high on adrenaline but still exhausted. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I just wanted to keep moving, but I forced myself to stop, take a break, drink some water. I consulted my map, and I found a single track road that looked like it could take me back almost to my entry point. And yeah, it was gonna take maybe about, I don't know, 2 hours. Looked like it was about 5 miles. It was definitely gonna be a hike. But there was no way in hell I was headed back into that swamp, compass or no compass. So that's it. A short 4-mile hike that could have turned into a serious survival situation if I had panicked and let my impulses take over. Now, obviously, could I have survived the night in the swamp or 2 nights in the swamp? Of course, I could have totally done that. I had a water filter with me. I had a little bit of food with me. The weather didn't call for any sort of rain. It wasn't going to get cold at night. So I could have definitely survived, but it would have sucked. My family would have been paranoid and scared and trying to figure out where the hell I was. They probably would have sent out search teams. It just would have been a colossal mess. So I'm very thankful that the minute I realized that I was lost and I didn't have my compass, I stopped immediately. I cannot stress that enough. If you are lost, the minute you realize you're lost, you need to stop moving and take a break. And that's exactly what I did. I took a moment to collect my thoughts, I made a plan, and I executed on that plan. So, what are the takeaways from this experience? Well, number one, I replaced the crappy cordage on my compass with Titan survival cord and a knot that should never come loose. And then, thanks to a suggestion from one of my buddies, I invested in a top quality wrist compass as a backup. So when I pull out my map and I put the bearing in my main compass, I'm gonna put that bearing in my wrist compass, and I'm also gonna write down that bearing because, you know, you could bump into something, whatever, and, you know, your bearing could get jacked up on the compass dial. So I think adding in those levels of redundancy for my compass and my bearing is gonna prevent this type of thing from happening again. Secondly, instead of inherently trusting that my compression straps will work, like they should, I'm now securing my tarp or poncho with zip ties that I just run through the grommets, and then I thread those through the webbing on my pack, and it will take a frickin' act of God to separate those two. Third, I'm gonna carry at least 3 pairs of socks with me from now on instead of just 2. If I'm gonna be near a swamp, maybe I'll carry even more. And then finally, to avoid that painful chafing from the seams of my pants, I'm telling you guys, the pain really kicked in the next day. And I would show you a picture, but it's graphic in nature, and I don't think you want to see the inner part of my quadricep in that fashion. But I'm telling you, we're talking, you know, about 8 inches in length and about 4 inches in height. It just rubbed completely raw. So the best way to prevent this chafing from happening in the future is to wear the leggings I use for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? So those serve as a rash guard when you're rolling and wrestling. So hypothetically speaking, they should take care of me if I wear the leggings and then put pants over that. So those are the changes that I'm gonna make, but the big question stands. How the hell did this happen? Was my map wrong? Was my bearing wrong? Did I screw up somehow? And what I finally figured out was that everything was right. I had done everything right, except I had missed one important thing. I failed to check the weather. And literally, go back a little bit, a few days, and check the weather, because the area that I was in South Georgia, it had been raining for a week straight. So the swamp had overflowed its bounds incredibly. And the area that should have been nice and dry, that I should have been able to work through and follow, was knee deep, waist deep in water. So what's the takeaway from that? Check the damn weather report. And don't even check it for the day that you're planning on going out, but try to go back and do a little research and see what the conditions have been like in that area. And then really, when it comes down to it, guys, I'll be honest with you, I hate swamps. My claustrophobia really kicks in when I'm literally surrounded by trees and vines and everything else, and I can't see like this far in front of my face. So no matter what the weather is, if there is a swamp anywhere in the area, I'm going to avoid that swamp at all costs. So those are my takeaways. That's the adventure. If you guys have had some adventures like that, or an actual survival situation or what have you, leave a comment down below. Tell me how you work through it, and tell me the lessons that you learned. And as always, guys, thanks a lot for watching. If you have not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video. Show your support for the channel by checking out the wide range of survival gear available at thesurvivaloutpost.com. We stock only top quality, rugged, tactical equipment and apparel designed to support any mission or situation life may throw your way. Any gear you've seen in this video is linked up down there in the pinned post, and be sure to check out the suggested videos for more real-world survival content and training.